guys, welcome to your first chemistry video. We're going to talk about chapter 1 today, and that's going to tell you what chemistry is and what matter is. Now, chemistry is a central science, and so when we talk about what chemistry is, it's the study of matter and what changes that matter undergoes. Chemistry is needed in all other sciences. You need a basic understanding of chemistry to be able to relate to how things work in other sciences as well. Now, matter, you should remember this from physical science, what matter is, but it's anything that has mass and takes up space. Your desk, you, a person, is matter. Pencil, pen, food, air, anything like that that has mass and takes up space is matter. And mass is how we measure how much matter we have. Okay, so when I have the mass of something, that tells me how much matter I have, not how much it weighs. That's different. We're going to talk about that. But mass is how much matter we have. So what is the difference between mass and weight? Mass is the amount of matter something has. We just discussed that. However, weight is not just the amount of matter, but it's also the effect that the gravitational pull has on that matter. When we weigh ourselves, when we're standing on a scale, it's measuring how much force we are placing onto the earth because of the gravitational pull. And so that is what weight is. And so that's how mass and weight differ. Now, let's look at the scientific method. The scientific method, I'm going to go through the steps and then we're going to discuss them. The first step of the scientific method is to observe. The second step is to state the problem that we have, like something that you're trying to solve. Third is to collect data, collect information about it. This could also be the research step. If you had to do research, this would be where you did that. The fourth step is form a hypothesis. Fifth, test the hypothesis. Sixth step is to record your data. And the last step is to draw a conclusion. So this is the scientific method. You need to know this order. Now let's talk about this in a little bit more detail. The scientific method is a systematic approach to solving problems. So learning, and this is something I just said, but learning the scientific method helps us develop critical thinking skills. And using this approach helps to provide a method for all scientists to use so that we can compare data with one another and verify the work of others. Now let's look at the scientific method in just a little bit more detail. The first step was observation, and there are two types of observations that you will make when you're doing scientific labs and working through the scientific method. The first type is qualitative data. Qualitative data is that type of data that relates to the five senses: seeing, feeling, hearing, tasting, smelling. Okay, anything related to those five senses is going to be qualitative data, so it's physical characteristics. If I say the book is red, that's qualitative data. The next type of observations that you'll make are quantitative data. Quantitative data is numerical information. It always tells how much, how little, how big something is, how tall, how fast. That is quantitative data. And you're going to use both of these in your observations in the science lab. Now, a hypothesis is a tentative explanation. It's what you think might happen when you begin your scientific method. Then we have to test the hypothesis. When you test your hypothesis to see if it's correct or not, that means you're doing an experiment. So experiment and testing the hypothesis is the same thing. This is when you test the hypothesis, and there are different parts of an experiment. One part of the experiment are the variables, and we actually have two types of variables that will be in any experiment that we do. We will always have dependent and independent variables. Dependent variables are always the result of the experiment, the outcome of the experiment, so it's a measurement usually. It's something not tangible, it's not an object, but it's the result or the outcome that normally is a measurement for you. The independent variable is always the item you are testing, so it's actually usually an object. And they can easily get confused, but if you remember that dependent variable is not an object, but it's the outcome of the experiment, the independent variable is an object that you're testing in an experiment. And so those are how those differ. Now, another part of the experiment are the control and constants. Now, a control group is the group in your experiment that stays normal, the thing that you're not changing. And it's going to be what you compare the experimental group with. And then you also have things called constants. Constants are items in the experiment that stay the same in both the control group and the experimental group. So, for example, if we had two plants and we wanted to test if fertilizer helped them grow faster, we would have one plant that had no fertilizer. That would be our control group. We would have another plant that had fertilizer. That would be our experimental group. Now, some constants we would want to make sure that both groups had the same pot, both groups had the same type of soil, both were watered the same amount, etc. So that is what I mean by constants. Constants are going to be what's the same in both the control group and the experimental group. Now, a conclusion is a judgment based on the information you obtained while doing an experiment, and you will always tell in the conclusion whether you've accepted or rejected your hypothesis. Now, theory and scientific law. These are developed through science experiments, and so that's why we're going to go ahead and talk about them. A theory is an explanation of a natural phenomenon based on many observations and investigations over time. All theories are still subject to new data, and they can be changed or modified. Theories have not been proven yet. An example would be the Big Bang Theory. And so be very careful when you believe things that people just automatically tell you, even scientists, because some things that they say are for sure might still be theories, and they're not for sure. They could still be changed. And so make sure that you look and you investigate on your own and determine what you think and believe. Now, scientific law. This is when many scientists have come to the same conclusions about certain relationships in nature and that they have found no exceptions. So scientific law is something that has been proven, and it's something that all scientists agree is correct and that there's no other exceptions for it. This is a relationship in nature usually, and it's always supported by many experiments. They have done a lot of experiments before they make something a scientific law. An example of this would be the law of gravity. None of us doubt the law of gravity. We know if we're holding something here on Earth and we let go of it, it's going to drop to the ground. And so that's an example of a scientific law. Now, lastly, let's talk about scientific research very quickly. There are different types of scientific investigations. One is pure research. This is when you just want to learn something new, or there's one type of area that you want to learn more about, and you're just doing research just to gain knowledge. Another type of research is applied research. This is when you have a certain problem, and you want to find the answer to that problem. And so this is called applied research, when you're researching and investigating to find the answer to that problem. You know, applied research would be a cure for AIDS, cure for cancer. There are problems there that we're trying to find the answers to, and as people research and investigate that, that's called applied research. Now, sometimes there are chance discoveries. A scientist or someone might be doing research on something else and come across something by chance. Nylon, which is used in a lot of our clothes, synthetic fabrics. I mean, it's used all over the place. Parachutes, I mean, it's everywhere. This was discovered by chance. There was a scientist who took a glass rod and placed that glass rod into some liquids and some chemicals. And when he pulled the glass rod out, it brought out some stretchy fibers. And so they ended up developing these fibers further and further along to where then they could use them as a synthetic silk, because they could withstand high temperatures. So this brought something new, and they discovered something new, and it was all by chance. Now, technology is the practical use of scientific information. Technology is science applied, okay? So they take a science concept and they apply it, and that gives us technology. That's how we have our cell phones. That's how we have anything, computers, TV. All of our technology came from something learned in science, and then they made an application for it, and then we have technology. All right, guys, this is the end of our first video, and so what I need you to do is I need you to go ahead and jot me down a summary. This is how I want you to summarize. Now this summary, remember, is going to be how I check that you've watched the video when you come in class. So make sure you have it available. And this is how I'd like you to summarize. I want you to write the letters A, B, and C down on your piece of paper. And I would like you to come up with a phrase or a word that represents each letter. But each letter has to represent something we've discussed in this video, an important fact that we discussed in this video. So write down the letters A, B, and C, and then come up with a phrase or a word that represents key points of the video you watched. I can't wait to see you in class, and I hope you have a good evening.